is Sarah Havens, and I'm a field specialist in natural resources. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about one of Missouri's newest unique syrups that we're producing, and that's Missouri Walnut Syrup. Why walnut syrup? So, of course, you've probably heard of maple syrup. This is traditionally made using sugar maple. Other maple species are able to be used for making maple syrup. However, in some parts of Missouri, maple species aren't as common as walnuts are, making walnut a good selection. Walnut syrup also tastes delicious, and walnuts do produce substantial sap, making it easy to tap them and to collect that sap, similarly to what we do when we collect maple sap. The process is pretty simple. So collecting sap, we can use traditional maple syrup collection techniques. We then need to store the sap. This is usually, particularly if you're running a smaller operation, you'll want to store it so you can boil it down all at the same time, just for efficiency's sake. And then boiling that sap down to syrup, and finally either utilizing it or preserving that syrup for later use. So this is just a quick look at the process I've used to collect walnut sap and then make it into syrup. So just, again, you can use all the tools that we use for maple syrup production. These can be purchased online. First, we start with a tap, or a spile, as it is sometimes called. This is personal choice on this one. I'm using metal taps that get put in the trees. I'm also using a 5/16 inch tap. So there is some variations. There's 3/16, 5/16, and 7/16. And really, it just depends on what your operation looks like. In my case, I'm using these metal spiles that have hooks on them. And then I attach plastic bags to those hooks to collect it, and I collect by hand. In some cases, you can set up an operation utilizing plastic tubing. This makes it a lot easier if you're collecting a lot of sap, because it will take and divert all that sap into a large storage container while we wait for boiling it down. In my case, it's just a small operation. So again, that sap's collected in these plastic bags, and then usually every 24 to 48 hours, I will empty these bags. Walnut sap production follows pretty much the guidelines we use for maple sap production. So usually when the temperatures are above freezing during the day and below freezing at night, this is going to cause the sap to run, is the term that we use for this. And that's going to be good production days. So here in Missouri, we had some good production days in January. And then these first 2 weeks of February, we've not had any run at all with the below freezing daytime temperatures. But there's still time for collection. So I'll start collection again next week when we have those temperatures that reach above freezing. The next step is to store the sap. So as pictured here, I collect it in the plastic bags. And then I save mine in food safe plastic buckets, and it is being frozen in between. So I'm not collecting a lot to make it worth my while to boil it down each time I collect. So I'm freezing in those food safe buckets to have a large boil towards the end of my season of sap collection. And we do stop collecting. So once the buds start to swell, we get close to bud break, this is when the starches that are in the roots. So during this time of spring, when we have those above freezing temperatures, that starch is being converted to a sugar, which is why it tastes great when we boil it down and concentrate it. However, when we get close to bud break, those starches will no longer be converted into sugars. They'll stay as starches. And this will make syrup taste bitter. So we do stop collecting usually close to bud swelling. So it depends on the year. So I'm going to try and collect through mid-March. Step 3 is to boil this down. So this is about the halfway point on a batch that I boiled down kind of early in my season. And I was really just kind of getting a feel for how long it would take, how much it would boil down to. And I found on mine that I took about 48 cups of sap, and I ended up with about 1 1/4 cups of syrup. So the conversion on this is about 40 to 1. So 40 gallons of sap would make 1 gallon of syrup. And then finally, the actual product. So we do have to boil our sap down to give us a 66 to 68% sugar content. This is the ideal sugar content for maple syrup and for walnut syrup. And this also kind of hinders any crystallization. If you go too high, it'll start to crystallize. And if you don't go high enough, it can cause it to sour or spoil faster because it doesn't have a high enough sugar concentration. It also, if you don't boil long enough, it'll stay thin and it won't be a little bit thicker like we like syrup to be. Once we're done boiling down, so I boiled outside until I got low enough, and then I brought it and finished in the stove. But this was a very small batch. If you are boiling down 100 gallons of sap, you would want to do this outside, and you would most likely want to explore using a wood-fueled fire because of the cost efficiency. So utilizing propane to boil down lots and lots of gallons of sap can be pretty inefficient. And then after it's done boiling, we actually run this through a cheesecloth felt. There are some commercial filters you can purchase, and this is going to filter out any debris, any sugar crystals that did form in our syrup while we were producing it, and then we can store it. If you're going to use it in the short term, you can actually just put this in a jar and put it in the fridge for a short period of time. If you plan to utilize it and store it throughout the year, you would want to utilize a hot canning process in order to preserve it long term. So again, kind of an interesting syrup for Missouri. It tastes great, has a butterscotch kind of overtone to it, and great on pancakes and waffles. So if you have any questions, my name is Sarah Havens. Again, I work as a field specialist in natural resources for University of Missouri Extension. I'm happy to answer any questions about the syrup making process. Thank you.